Hello, and welcome to this session, Free College During High School, Addressing Inequities in Dual Credit and Dual Enrollment. My name is Peggy Surbey, and I will be your moderator for this session. Just a few housekeeping rules before we start. Remember, if you have a question, please type it in the Q&A box, and we will get to as many as possible at the end of the session. Also, the presenter will only answer questions directly related to the session topic. At the end of the session, you will be redirected to the session survey. Please complete the session survey. Your answers will help with planning for the next year's conference. Please help me today in welcoming our presenter, Mr. Alonzo O. Ross. Mr. Ross is a motivational and collaborative educator, passionate about providing educational access and opportunity to all students in Central Indiana. Alonzo's real talk, front porch delivery style captivates and engages others, inspiring them to make a more significant impact on the lives of the students they serve. On the community engagement side, Alonzo is a 13-year active member of the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity, where he serves as the executive director for the District of Indiana Alphas. Alonzo is a champion for mentorship, development, and empowerment. He believes in meeting people where they are and encouraging them to see their fullest potential. Alonzo received his bachelor's degree in business administration from the Indiana University East and his MBA from the University of Southern Indiana. Currently serves as the director of dual enrollment and transition at Ivy Tech Community College in Indianapolis. Alonzo is the husband of Meghan and the father of two children, Zola and Noah. Please help me today in welcoming Alonzo Ross. Thank you.
All right, so thank you so much for that warm introduction, Peggy, and hello, Indiana Black Expo. I am so excited to be presenting on such an important topic and such a noteworthy conference. So I say good day to each of you. For the next hour or so, I plan to share some of the tools from my educator's toolbox so that we might do better together. And as a lifelong educator, I'm growing and learning each day as well. So if you have some insights that you wish to share with me, please feel free to do so as we advance in this work. So free college during high school. Wow, right? We're going to unpack that. And we have some objectives that we will go over as well. So by the end of this talk, I want you to have a basic understanding of the benefits and basics of dual enrollment and dual credit. I want all participants to be able to articulate what an equitable educational journey looks like. We know what a journey of inequity looks like. We want to know what an equitable journey in education looks like for our students. I want for participants to also be able to identify the characteristics of an equity literate educator, as we should all be striving to be more equity literate, and to understand the basics of the dual enrollment playbook. But most of all, by the end of this talk, I would like for each of us to commit to leveling the playing field. Before we get into the talk for today, I want us to have a basic understanding of the terminology of dual enrollment. Now, dual enrollment, you might have heard, could take the form of several different terms. You might have heard dual enrollment, dual credit, concurrent enrollment. But for the sake of this conversation, I really would like for us to maximize on getting the greatest amount of benefit for the students. And for me, I believe that's dual enrollment. What we know about dual enrollment is that it exists because of a partnership between a school district, and a college. It could encompass academic liberal arts courses or career and technical education courses. The student is taught by a college professor or instructors. For dual enrollment, tuition is charged. Dual enrollment may also simultaneously earn high school credit for the student, and within our sphere, we call that dual credit. And also, one of the greatest benefits is that the student starts building a college transcript. Now, while there are a myriad of benefits of dual enrollment, we are going to highlight just a few. One of the first benefits to dual enrollment is that the student gets a jump start on their future careers and academic journeys. There's a significant cost savings as well. Because our students are starting college earlier, our students are actually able to complete college sooner. And due to crosswalks for technical and priority liberal arts courses, our students are able to maximize their transferability to other colleges and universities. We have articulation agreements in place so that our students are able to figure out how our dual enrollment courses transfer to other higher education institutions. And it also outlines the cost benefit and savings that families get by participating in dual enrollment and dual credit programming, such as 2+2 agreements. And because these students are actual college students, they benefit from all of the other benefits that any other college student would get. So when it comes to college resources of accessing the library, tutoring services, study rooms, and other campus facilities, our students benefit. So we're actually building the student intellectually. Because the student is a college student, they also benefit from being able to participate in college clubs and other events. So we're also contributing to the student's social growth and development. If we want to prepare our students to compete globally, we must provide the student with academically rigorous curriculums and an enriched college experience. According to the Commission of Higher Education, in 2019, 1 in 8 high school graduates were awarded graduation waivers. Graduation waivers demonstrate that a student is not able to pass Indiana's graduation requirements for high school. These high school students who were awarded these waivers were less likely to enroll in college, more likely to need remediation, and half as likely to complete college credits. So what this says to us is that there is an increased need for dual enrollment programming on our campuses to level the playing field. Now, we know that dual enrollment is a natural fit for higher achieving students who are more academically advanced and are prepared to handle the academic rigors of college. But what research also suggests is that education leaders might witness improved overall academic outcomes for lower achieving students who complete dual enrollment as well. Doesn't that level the playing field? Now, dual enrollment has been shown to mediate the need for developmental educational classes, which can facilitate the students' completion of a degree and them potentially earning a higher degree. And students having the ability to complete intermediate courses such as your college level math, college level English increases the likelihood that that student might continue to matriculate to college, four-year college or university beyond their credential at community college. Now, dual enrollment offered as part of career and technical education as a way to increase the rigor and connect students to the workforce also builds awareness for students who might not typically have considered enrolling in college. So as we can see, ultimately, this level of programming, dual enrollment programming, increases overall student achievement. So I talked at the very beginning at the introduction, as we were discussing our objectives, we talked about the different things or how a journey of inequity would look. And so as we advance, I want for us to talk about what a better journey would look like. A more equitable journey for historically underrepresented and underserved students of color. Now, this journey doesn't necessarily start when that student has arrived at 9th grade. It doesn't arrive once we've gotten that student into their freshman orientation sessions of high school to discuss what that student is going to need to advance. A better journey of equity starts when that student is in elementary school. And how that happens is with advanced curriculums. Teachers are training college preparatory skills such as note-taking and inquiry. And we're educating parents on those pathways. Students are also taking their very first trips to local colleges. I found it amazing as I was working with students, and I heard some of them say, wow, this is my first time being on a college campus, and they live within the 465 corridor here in Indianapolis. And I said, wow, you've lived here all your life, and this is your first time on a college campus. And I started thinking. And I shared with you that this becomes very personal for me because you heard within my bio, I am a student, I am a parent of a very bubbly 6-year-old that just completed first grade. And I incorporate my son's story, Noah, into a better journey because having a mother as a teacher, having a father as a higher education professional, it is our life's work to ensure that our children have a more equitable journey in education. When my son was in kindergarten, we received notes home almost weekly about my son's behavior. And it was troubling because, as many of you might imagine, if there are any educators' kids out there, if mama or daddy's a teacher, you can't show out in school because mom and dad are going to take care of you when you get home. So my son, getting those notes, we started having conversations, and I talked to him. I said, buddy, you know, what's going on at school? What's going on? The teacher's sending us notes about you misbehaving, you acting out, not paying attention, all of these things. We had countless parent-teacher conferences about connecting and just trying to figure out if we get to the root cause, what was going on. The behaviors that our son exhibited at home did not reflect the behaviors that he was exhibiting in the classroom, and we were just trying to meet in the middle. We met with this teacher several times, and the teacher shared with us, oh, I've been a teacher for 25 years, and I've seen this time and time again. And I began to get the sense that this teacher was counting my son out before he got started. As my son moved on, because we knew that wasn't a good fit, we tried things out and we said, hey, this might not be the best fit. And we got my son into a classroom intentionally that we thought that he might be better, that he might be more suited or more set up to be successful. And ironically, the class that we got my son into happened to be a high abilities classroom. We didn't seek out a high abilities teacher by any means initially, but when we had a conversation with this teacher, we shared with her our vision for what it is that we wanted to do as parents, as fellow educators for our son. He was given permission to stay in this high abilities class. When my son first started, he was barely reading, capturing sight words. At the end of that class, as he just completed first grade, my son is reading everything. And we couldn't be prouder of the decisions that we made as parents and as educators to put my son in a position so that he could be successful. And for those of you that might be wondering, well, how did the behavior change? Well, because my son was being challenged. Because my son was being challenged, and I know we took a little bit of a break because of a particular thing that we had going on last year, but there was not one letter sent home discussing behavior. And the teacher emailed us when my son was out sick once. The teacher emailed us, hey, I'm just checking in, making sure, seeing what's going on with Noah. Didn't see him in class, wanting to make sure that our son was okay. So we need educators that are invested in our students so that we make sure that these students get over the finish line. So as we continue on our walk to a better journey, this advanced curriculum continues through middle school. And as I said, those college trips, those things make all of the difference because our students, I see what I become, right? So if I see success, I'm going to strive for success. And so that way, college becomes a tangible next step versus merely a distant option for our students when we package it as a tangible next step. As this student matriculates into middle school, it's very important that they have had Algebra 1 by 8th grade and that they're attending info sessions about dual enrollment as they continue. Now, as the student matriculates and gets to high school, it's going to be very important that we remove any barriers that inhibit the student's success. So when we talk about college placement testing, any remediation programming that is needed to ensure that the student is able to level up, we provide that student with the necessary resources. The student has built a relationship with their school counselors as such that they can discuss their interests and their future aspirations. We've also, at this point, started to talk about dual enrollment programming and what that might look like within this student schedule. Now, a more equitable journey will also include that holistic student support and development, because we as educators know that sometimes this will require that we're able to meet some social needs of our students. And because all of the social needs, social and emotional needs of the student are being met, this student is able to be involved in campus participation, such as campus involvement, such as marching band, cheerleading, and these types of things. This student then goes on to graduate from high school, goes to college, graduates from college, and starts their career. Now, in order for us to facilitate more equitable journeys, a better journey, as we say, all educators must be versed in equity literacy. And not only must we be versed in equity literacy, we must be a threat to inequity. Our presence must threaten inequity. So equity literacy is comprised of the skills and dispositions that enables educators to recognize, respond to, and redress conditions that deny some students access to educational opportunities enjoyed by their peers. In 2019, I was fortunate to be a part of a talk that was the Student Advocates Conference that, as we all know here, is put on by the Commission of Higher Education, the Strada Foundation. And we talked about building equity literate educators and how our personal identities play into who we are and who we become as educators. But it also contributes to how we see our students, how we respond to our students. And that is of the utmost importance as we look at building a more equitable pathway for our students. The Equity Literacy Institute defines the equity literate educator as one who examines student outcomes and disparities, recognizes students are not responsible for unequal outcomes of groups that have been historically and currently experience discrimination and marginalization. I'm going to read that again. We recognize that the students are not responsible for unequal outcomes of groups that have historically and currently experienced discrimination and marginalization. We respect the aspirations and struggles of students that are underserved by the current educational system. We allocate additional college and community resources to students who possess greater need. And we recognize that the elimination of entrenched biases, stereotypes, and discrimination in institution requires intentional deconstruction of structures policies, practices, norms, and values that are assumed to be race neutral. Now, I spoke very strongly about my son, Noah. That's my first baby. Now, my daughter, Zola, this just brings to mind my daughter, Zola. If my daughter wants to wear her Afro puffs in the classroom, she shouldn't be sent home for violating dress code. If my baby wants to wear braids or locks or her natural hair, she should not be sent home for violating dress code. This is ingrained institutional racism that has been built into our system, and it is up to us to be a threat to these inequities for the betterment of our students. The Indiana Commission for Higher Education's early college report details that Indiana has made positive strides in growth for dual credit. And we talked about dual credit and the differences with dual credit and dual enrollment. And as we can see here, that each area improved over a 4-year time span. 65% of white students had dual credit in 2018, 38% of Black students, and 50% of Hispanic or Latino students had dual credit. Now, albeit we do see growth in dual credit, there is still opportunity to level the playing field. We have room to work, and I am confident that some of the best shareholders to do this work is right under the sound of my voice in this session. Now, the dual enrollment playbook was produced by the Aspen Institute and the Community College Research Center. And what happened was they did an analysis of statewide data from the states of Florida, Ohio, and Washington to identify those high school community pairings and community colleges with above average participation rates and strong outcomes for historically underrepresented students of color as it related to dual enrollment. And so essentially, these 3 states are getting it right. As a matter of fact, 1 in 5 school districts across the country have closed the racial equity gap in access as it relates to dual enrollment courses. And I'm confident that we can do the same. And I'm convinced, that we can do the same. And they've outlined 5 principles to advance equity in dual enrollment. And we're going to highlight this. And I challenge you to access the dual enrollment playbook, read through it for yourself, and identify how we might be able to duplicate these efforts. As educators, we pack a lot of things in our toolboxes so that we pack a lot of things in our toolboxes that we have found that work. And from my reading and of the research that has been done, these things work. And one of the first things that we found was that we must set a shared vision and goals that prioritize equity. In essence, it must start with equity and it must end with equity. Senior leaders that are working to put things in place must think with an equity mindset, must move with an equity mindset. And each shareholder that impacts that student, that touches that student, must be sold on the why. That happens when our mission of dual enrollment is connected to a broader vision. So when we think about 2 institutions that are connecting for the purpose of dual enrollment, and for the sake of this example, I will use my institution. My institution's mission and the institution's mission of a school or district, we must be able to thoroughly identify and connect the dots as to how dual enrollment plays and contributes to each mission and what our parts are within the mission. We must also be able to commit to equity and dual enrollment and make those intentional investments for the advancements of students of color. We have to consider our partners' incentives in the constraints. And for those of you that may also be business students or may have business degrees, You know that we're always talking about that ROI, or that return on investment. Well, the dual enrollment playbook highlights that we should be more concerned with the return on mission versus the return on investment. We must also develop an equity-minded culture. Different leaders that spoke about their experiences in creating more equitable programming said that they had to convince individuals to see students of color as capable of college level work and believe in the urgency in supporting these students of color's acceleration. Attitudes are going to have to be changed. Literally, entire systems are going to have to be changed in order for this to work the way that it must. Leaders must instill high expectations for our students, and our students will learn to have those high expectations for themselves. I've been in rooms with leaders because I've been in this work for a little while, and I've been in rooms with leaders that were basically told, the leaders of a particular district had a vision for their students. And they said, I want my students to earn associate degrees by the time they graduate from high school. And other partners not sold on the vision said, well, we think that that might be a good idea, but we may want to shoot a little lower. We may not want to cast such a wide net. We might want to lower that bar to ensure that more students are successful. But if we lower that bar, friends, we're going to be doing what we've always done, lowering the standards to ensure that more students are able to meet the standard when until students are still being left behind. Well, I'm confident, and I stand before you today to say that the school leader of that particular district in that particular outfit said, no, that's actually incorrect. If we set the expectations for the students, we provide the students with the necessary supports to be successful, challenge the students, teach the students to believe in themselves, the students will rise to the occasion and the students will be successful. I couldn't have been more prouder of my partner in education for standing up for our students on that particular day. And we need more equity-minded leaders within this space and within this sphere so that we might be more successful as we continue to build and do this work. Additionally, we must expand equitable access and build early awareness aspirations. And as I shared earlier, we talked about how we need to start this work in elementary school. This doesn't need to start late middle school. It needs to start elementary schools with those foundational skills that our students will continue to build along throughout their entire academic trajectory. And we need to improve our outreach to communities of color. Oftentimes when we're talking about a first generation family or a family that doesn't have very much college experience, they may have never heard of dual enrollment, or they may not truly understand its value. And as educators, it is up to us to educate, and we must truly talk about it. So it can't be, oh, I just had these beautiful flyers created, I'm going to send these flyers. It can't simply be sending a flyer, because you're not able to truly articulate the value in merely a flyer. Sometimes the dual enrollment playbook suggested that we must seek out those non-traditional avenues to ensure that we get the word across to improve our outreach to communities. Back in the old day, y'all hear me? Back in the day, when we wanted to get a message out to the Black community specifically, where did we go? We went into the churches. We went into other religious organizations. We met the people where they were so that we got this word across, so that we can articulate the value of dual enrollment and dual credit programming, so that we are able to strategically and actively recruit the students that we need to put in this pipeline to create a more equitable educational journey for all. Other things that are already in place in a lot of areas, in my institution in particular, is the limiting of impact, limiting of the impact of placement testing. Several institutions have gone to a more test optional model, and this definitely does contribute positively, in my opinion, for the advancement of equity. But another thing that we must do is address costs and the logistics. When we're speaking of dual enrollment, we're talking about students who will actually be transporting to a college campus. There's typically a cost associated with that. We must talk about the logistics. Who are the accountability persons? Once that student arrives on the college campus, all of these logistics have to be fine-tuned and ironed out. And then 3, we have to connect students to advising and supports that ensure equitable outcomes. This is one that I'm very passionate about as a former and current academic advisor. Academic advisor is very near and dear to my heart. My department at Ivy Tech employs the appreciative advising model, which you might have heard about the appreciative advising model through the Appreciative Advising Revolution by Bloom, Hudson, and He. But appreciative advising is that practice of asking those generative, open-ended questions that engage the student to be more responsive in advising sessions. We know that a lot of times our students will come to us with barriers. We have to break down those barriers. They don't trust us immediately, and why should they? They haven't been taught to simply trust the person giving you this advice. And so we must build that trust mutually. I trust the student trusts the advice that they're receiving from me. And this process can occur through appreciative advising. And then another component of that is to coordinate advising across partners. One of the things that I'm very proud of is the collaboration that I have with Indianapolis Public Schools Post-Secondary Readiness Department. And such, the Director of Post-Secondary Readiness invited me to participate in a professional development program for school counselors. And whereas I served as the keynote and I shared appreciative advising with the school counselors. And so in sharing that, I was able to share some different experiences that I've had with students and different advising in practice. But what we're also inadvertently doing is we're building a relationship across institutions. And when we're able to build that relationship across our institutions, it's for the betterment of our students. So we must continue to build and grow on that. Additionally, we have to provide proactively provide supports for students that might be struggling as they're attempting this work. We know that there are shortcomings for some of our students, and we know that some of our students have not been adequately prepared to handle the academic rigors of this work. And so what we must do as educators is monitor that performance, see where our students are, and build in the necessary tools so that our students are successful. One of the ways that we're able to do that within my institution is an early warning system that we're able to review the students' grades as they're happening. And we're also having those proactive conversations with our students to really just get a pulse check to see where our students are. Then 4 is to provide high quality instruction that builds on students' competence and confidence. That competence and confidence, when we're able to align our mission with contributing to our students' competence and confidence, we can't go wrong. We have to understand how K-12 courses enable or impede acceleration. For our underrepresented students, we know that several of them were unprepared or come to high school or arrive at high school unprepared. And that isn't necessarily because they're not capable, but just as the attempt was made on my own child, they were tracked out of those college preparatory courses very early, and no one went in and picked them back up. And so what we must do as educators is ensure that we understand how to increase our students' performance and how to provide them with the supports to be successful. We must also prepare our students to acclimate to college expectations because things are very different when you think about leaving the high school arena and then matriculating on to college. From the way that we do things to the language and the technologies, the languages and the way that we refer to things. So we must make sure that we are providing our students with all of the necessary supports to fully acclimate. And we must also build students' confidence through excellent teaching. And we are able to do that through dual enrollment. We must also support faculty to enable high quality instruction. So we must invest in the educators that are within our midst. So if we're, and I'm talking to our senior leaders now, we have to give our teachers, our K-12 dual enrollment, dual credit teachers, we have to give them the necessary support and professional development that they're going to need to continue to sharpen and iron their craft, because they can only give what they have, and we have to give to them so that they can give unto the students. We must organize teams and develop relationships to maximize potential. You hear those key themes of building relationships. It continues to focus as we move along, and we must elevate equity-focused dual enrollment teams. So in the very beginning, I shared that it starts with dual enrollment and it ends with dual enrollment. It starts with equity and ends with equity. And I'm so excited about dual enrollment, as you might imagine. It comes up in everyday conversation, but it must start with equity and end with equity. So our teams must move with an equity mindset in order for this to be successful. Relationships must be built at all levels, from the frontline academic advisor to the CEO. There must be a relationship that exists amongst all parties so that each person understands their role and how they contribute to the better vision or the bigger vision of what it is that we are trying to do. Additionally, in organizing teams and developing those relationships, the dual enrollment playbook also suggests that we have access to outcomes and enact data-driven improvement decisions. So when it's up to us to actually make those data-driven decisions, we must have access to that data. We must keep accurate data. And I'm so thankful to for the Commission of Higher Education for having that ready data that I actually shared in this presentation, because it really allows us as educators to really view and to see, where are we currently, okay? We know where we are currently. We know where we want to go. So it's bridging that gap. It's getting to that place. And it is up to us as educators to get there. All right, so we have kind of unpacked the basis of the dual enrollment playbook. Again, I challenge you to read it for yourself. It's an easy read, compelling read, and it will really inspire you, hopefully, as it has inspired me. So let's level the playing field, okay? So we know at this point some of the elements of what Alonzo has recommended. I'm recommending that we invest in equitable dual enrollment programming, and you can go about that in a myriad of ways. Invest in equity literacy programming. Okay, and this is for our educators, because if we don't see it, we can't help it. If we don't know about it, if we're not well versed in it, if we're not serving as a threat to inequity, how can we be a threat, right? We must raise the standards and expectations, not only for our students, but for ourselves. We must raise those standards of expectation. We must incorporate appreciative advising. Appreciative advising works. One of the things that I'm very proud of that I've worked with students, particularly as I've been working with them via Zoom, is I record that first advising. I record every conversation, but I record the first academic advising session that I have with the student. And we're continuing to work. The student is slowly building their confidence, slowly building their skill set. And then I show them in a later session how they have advanced. I'll find a particular point within the recording to where a student wasn't sure of themselves. And I'll say, hey, let's go back and just reflect. Because we want to be reflective learners and we want to be reflective leaders. So we'll go back and we'll review it. And the student will say, they'll find it funny. But what I want the student to capture is their growth. And when we capture our growth, that's when we can all be more successful. And then finally, folks, we must care. I think this kind of goes without saying, but we must care about this work. We must be invested in creating equitable educational experiences. We must invest in leveling the playing field with our time, with our resources, and with our attention. The future of this great state depends upon us simply caring and being devoted to this level of work. These are my resources. This will be a good opportunity to take out a phone or screen capture this so that you might go back and review some of the things that I have reviewed as well to add to your educator's toolbox so that we might be successful together. I want to connect with you. So please find me on LinkedIn. You can open your cameras now and point it at the screen at the QR code that you see. Send me an email. Let's connect. Let's chat. Let's talk about this work. I believe that the more we collaborate as educators, we're able to do it together. And before I turn it back over to Peggy, I just want to thank Indiana Black Expo and Ivy Tech Community College's Office of Diversity, Equity, and Belonging for providing me with this platform and opportunity to connect with you. And I hope that something that I've said motivates you so that we can get out here and level the playing field. And what questions do you have for me, Ms. Peggy, at this time?
All right, so I just really want to thank you, Alonzo, for this very informational session. And we do have a few questions from the audience. So the first question is from Marvin Bardo. Are free college placement tests based on economic status? My scholar was charged for college placement and AP testing.
Okay, so I can only speak for my institution specifically, but I do know that waivers exist in particular districts when it comes to students that are receiving free and or reduced lunch. But one of the ways that we are kind of mitigating that is with our free knowledge assessment at Ivy Tech. So students are able to gauge their academic performance and where they stand at no cost to our students. So it would be within individual locales to figure out what costs are associated and what waivers might be available.
All right, thank you very much. Our next question is from Gwen Kelly. How do you think elementary teachers should respond to situations when they see inequitable outcomes for children in their schools?
Absolutely. And one of the first ways, and thank you for that question, Ms. Kelly, one of the first ways is first being able to witness and easily identify that, and that is with equity literacy. By elementary teachers becoming more equity literate, they're able to identify the whys behind why so many of our students struggle. There are several resources available online, and I'm not pubbing for any institution or organization in particular, but there are free and very low cost trainings that educators can participate in. One that just immediately comes to mind is the Equity Literacy Institute that I've been able to learn a lot from by just reading their pamphlets and handouts. Paul Gorski has a lot of free things available online there, and that would be a solid start for an educator. But what's most important is that we connect those families and that we're having those conversations with families to connect them to those social resources that they're needing. And once we take care of those social needs, oftentimes that can fix some of the issues that we're experiencing in the classroom.
All right, I think kind of a second part to that question, and that maybe you could respond to, but I think it'd probably be difficult for teachers at times to forge ahead to their administrators to talk about those inequities. And so what would you suggest kind of that environment be, or how to approach the administrators when there are concerns around inequities?
Well, a lot of districts actually have social workers that are very well abreast to how to have these difficult and more challenging conversations. So we must all also, as educators, communicate with those within our midst. So Peggy, if you were a school counselor, if you were a social worker at the school that I'm working at, and I'm an elementary school teacher, and I notice that, little Johnny, not only is he coming without a pencil, but little Johnny is also coming to school every day hungry. How might I address that? Is I would reach out to the social worker to say, hey, I'm noticing there is a need. Could you help me to help this student? And what built-in strategies have you identified that we might be able to do together? And it comes to a think tank. Let's all figure out ways to be successful. And we want to stay within our lane, right? Because we don't want to overstep our lane. We don't want to offend the student. We don't want to offend the parent, but we do want to make sure that the student's basic needs are being met. And I believe that tapping into that school's social worker would be a great first step.
All right, thank you for that. This is a question from Anne. Is there a testing requirement for dual enrollment? In my experience, students had to score well, passing their standardized tests, and this has been a barrier for many of my students of color in pursuing dual credits because they don't qualify even if they are college bound with an excess of credits.
Absolutely. And I'm sorry, could you repeat that question one more time, Peggy? I think I missed one element of it.
Okay. So the first part of that question, is there a testing requirement for dual enrollment?
Okay.
And then the question goes on to say that in the experience, students had to score well, passing their standardized test. And this has been a barrier for many students of color in pursuing dual credits because they don't qualify even if they are college bound with an excess of credits.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, so the first part of that answer is going to be yes. The dual enrollment playbook that I highlighted basically has an entire section dedicated to this matter in particular. So as I am also unpacking the dual enrollment playbook, I challenge you to also unpack the dual enrollment playbook, because we do understand that there are state requirements for our students to participate in this level of programming. But what we must do is be creative, and what we must do is build those safe what we must do is build, we must be creative. Okay. We have to go back and do, if there's remediation work needed. So when we looked at a more equitable journey, and I talked about how we must go back and build in that remediation, this could take the place of boot camps. One of the things that Ivy Tech has done, or one of the programs that has been at Ivy Tech this summer, is the Summer Bridge program to prepare students. But we need more programming such as this in place so that our students could benefit from it well before they graduate from high school. So if that means that we need a bridge from middle school to high school, what does that look like so that we can actually level the playing field starting earlier? We need to make sure that our work is proactive versus reactive.
All right, thank you. This question is from Tamisha Allen. How do you suppose that we as educators promote dual credit, dual status enrollment more to our scholars?
Absolutely. And it's through education and having those conversations. One of the ways that I am working within my area to increase awareness is really having conversations in unconventional locations and unconventional places, because that's where you meet the people. That's where you tap into the people. So when I spoke previously in the presentation about connecting in churches and civic groups, I met with members from Indianapolis chapter of National Black MBA. And these are other MBAs within Indianapolis, but they have children, they have grandchildren. And so sharing of this opportunity gets it on the lips and on the minds of other shareholders so that they can spread the word for me. And one of the things that I've also learned is that good work does good work. So I've had parents to refer other parents to me and make the introductory emails to say, hey, I had a wonderful experience with Alonzo at Ivy Tech. You should look into dual enrollment and dual credit within your sphere. And I'm your friend. I'm your friend. So each of you that can actually see and or hear me, I've shared my contact information. If you want to talk about dual enrollment and dual credit opportunities and would like to welcome me into your space to talk about it, please feel free to welcome me. Either myself or a member of my team would be happy to present and share our information with you.
All right. Our next question is from Caroline Kalia. This question states, teacher in Colorado. So welcome from Colorado. When I was in high school, I was able to take AP courses. And if we passed the exam, we got college courses. Would this be the same type of thing as dual enrollment?
So very similar, but different. In that dual enrollment and dual credit is actually college experience that is transcripted, that says that the student took English 111 or English composition, took college algebra, and this is their actual letter grade for it. Now, and another thing that we may want to consider when it comes to the AP credit and the AP tests is that different institutions have different requirements for what grade you actually make from College Board or what score you make from College Board, that they actually count that as college credit. So a more surefire bet, or a more, I guess you would say a safer bet, would be to go with dual credit and dual enrollment.
Okay. All right. This question is from Jessica Lane. What suggestions do you have for high schools that do not have partners in elementary or middle schools for setting up programming that helps build those soft skills needed for success in dual enrollment?
Well, what recommendation would I have for high schools? I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Yes. What suggestions do you have for high schools that do not have partners in elementary or middle schools for setting up programming that helps build those soft skills needed for success in dual enrollment?
Absolutely. So I would say tap your college partners. I hate to just throw myself out there. So if I get a myriad of emails about this, because I'm putting myself out there and I'm putting my department out there, because we want to be your champions, we want to be on your team, and we want to ensure that this work is coming across. So oftentimes, if you reach out to a K-12, a K-14 department, or a K-12 department, P20 department at some institutions, they will oftentimes lend resources to ensure that we're getting those soft skills taught, but there are also professional development opportunities within districts. So this would be more so a conversation of challenging your districts, your superintendents, your professional development staff, to ensure that we are equipping our teachers with the skills necessary to be able to articulate and to teach those skills. So that's not the most solid answer, but there isn't a catch-all answer as it relates to that, because it's going to vary and differ based on locale. The dual enrollment playbook also highlights strategies that were used in the 3 states mentioned as to the way that they were able to do that. So I challenge you to also capture the book free online and read through it with us as we all advance and do better together.
All right, great. So this question is from Brittany Denny. And her question is, does the school have to have a partnership with Ivy Tech in order for the student to participate in dual enrollment? And I think the second part of that question is, what do you know across the country, and are there other resources available and other partnerships?
Okay, so the first part of that question is no. So I'm working with different families from different school districts that may not necessarily have a formalized memoranda of understanding with Ivy Tech to provide students with courses. Now, one of the things that I am very intentional about is still communicating with that school counselor at the high school, so that the school counselor is very well aware and abreast that this student is taking their high school courses, but the student is also a dually enrolled student at Ivy Tech. That way, we can work in concert for the success of this particular student. Oftentimes, students are satisfying requirements for their core 40, such as the government and econ class. But it's also important to have that consistent communication, even if there isn't a formalized memoranda of understanding, because dual enrollment is tuition paid, and you're actually paying the standard cost of tuition for students. A formalized memorandum of understanding is not required. And then the part 2 is, am I abreast or aware of other programs that have been successful? Absolutely. So although I am a Hoosier by address, by marriage, and by where I live, I was born in Milledgeville, Georgia, and I'm very, the local college there, Georgia College and State University, has an early college program, early college high school that has seen a lot of success, and it operates as very similar to a public charter, but students are able to benefit and able to take advantage of dual enrollment programming. But there are several other models that have been successful that I am currently studying for the advancement in this work. So thank you for that question.
Yes. It's great to hear how it is available in other parts, and of course your connections and your wealth of knowledge, I'm sure, is going to be shared greatly. So there are several questions just kind of in the chat about connecting with you, needing to see the QR code again and your contact information, where the playbook can be located, And so some questions like that. So someone did take a
Sure.
picture and it was kind of grayed, so they were unable to see that. So
Okay, let me see if I can drop it in the chat. I will work on dropping that in the chat. And after the presentation, my entire presentation will be available. It will be available in PDF format, which will have the links to the dual enrollment playbook. I might be able to copy it now, though, if you'll entertain me for just a moment. And so that is the dual enrollment playbook, and the QR code. Give me a second here. I will make sure that that is dropped in the chat. Matter of fact, let me do this the old fashioned way. The QR code was cute, wasn't it? But how about if I just drop my email address in the chat? How's that, right? So the QR code will also be available in the actual PowerPoint, as it will be PDF'd and archived for the reflection of this presentation or this talk.
all right. Thank you for doing that. There were lots of questions of people wanting to reach out. We do have, I think, just time for maybe one or two more questions. This question comes to us from Tolvi Patterson. And the question is, how important are community partnerships in the developing of a strong resource pipeline to better support our students? What is Ivy Tech doing in that area?
So these partnerships are of the utmost importance. We value them. We invest in them at Ivy Tech. I'm working with our development office, for one. It's working with several external partners for the allocation of additional resources and scholarship for students to in part alleviate the financial burden that dual enrollment will cost. We're working with different partners within the community. As these arrangements haven't been finalized, I can't actually just kind of lay them all out there right now, but there are several conversations that we're engaging in for the betterment of all students, but they are of the utmost importance. And that's when we talked about within the 5 ways that we're actually going to build these more equitable access to dual enrollment. A part of that is casting a shared vision, being able to communicate and articulate the mission of the college and the mission of this particular institution. So it is of the utmost importance, and we value and we support that. So thank you for that question, Mr. Patterson.
Yeah, it's definitely important for us to have community partners in all the work that we do for our youth to be successful.
Yes.
As well. So Alonzo, do you have any just, short closing comments before I end the session?
No. Well, one of the things that I would like to say again is that I'm really thankful for this opportunity to be able to come out and connect with my fellow educators from across the state and beyond Colorado. And I definitely hope that future opportunities present themselves so that we might all get together and form a think tank so that we can improve in this walk together, so that we might level the playing field. And I thank each of you for your time today.
Yeah, I mean, this is just an amazing resource and kind of a kept secret. And so it's great to get the information out there and for schools to continue to promote that information. So again, I just really want to thank you for your efforts today and this very valuable information as well. I would also like to thank everyone who attended today, this session on free college during high school, addressing inequities in dual credit and dual enrollment. So our session is ending. You will then be redirected to the session survey. Please complete the session survey, for your answers in the survey will help us for planning for next year. I wish to thank you all, and I hope you have a great conference. So thank you.
Thank you.